Hello and good evening. It is Sunday, September 19th, 2021. And we're talking about a Big Brother 23 episode that was actually 2 days ago on Friday, September 17th, here on Super Mader Brothers Podcasting, as we've been covering all 11 weeks of this season of Big Brother. We're down to the final four. I'm Dave Mader, joined with my brother Jeff Mader and co-host Jaemeel Robinson, as we have been. We took Friday off because they bumped what would normally have been tonight's episode for, I guess, the Emmys was tonight instead. So we're
tonight.
Where is tonight? I'm sorry. We got some recap tonight to go through of what was the remnants of the final or the most recent double eviction, the second double eviction where Hannah and Tiffany went out, and that's how we got to the final four. We eventually went on to an HOH competition that was CSI themed, and then some of the maneuvering happening with these final four. So we're gonna break that all down. Jeff, Jaemeel, let's start with Jeff. Are you feeling like the game is getting more interesting for you in this final stretch or less?
Interesting wouldn't be the right word. Probably confusing would be a good one. To me, like, I don't really understand some of these players' motivations. They don't seem to make sense to me. Like, except Xavier is the only one I can kind of follow. But the rest of them, like a Big D wanting to save Kyland over Azza makes zero sense to me. I don't get it. There's other ones like Azza wanting to take care of Hannah, like get rid of Hannah, like we saw in the recap tonight, and not put up the two big guys. Like, there's a bunch of things. I'm confused. As a show watcher, and I get Jaemeel and Amanda specifically are more live feed update type people, and I think they have a bit of a different perspective on the game than just the pure show watchers.
Right,
Jeff,
yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jaemeel.
Sorry, I'll just have a quick answer, Jeff. You're coming from a place thinking that everyone is trying to, like, has a good grip on gameplay mechanics and is trying to win. And it seems that some people just aren't that self-interested or are delusional to the point where what they think is common sense is absolutely the antithesis of proper gameplay. And that's where the confusion comes in, where you're like, there's no reason why someone would make this move. And they're like, this is the best move for my game.
Right. Yeah, Jaemeel, over to you. Yeah, so like we've seen a lot of these players who often make it down to especially into the jury phase of the game.
Be right back. Don't worry.
Be right back. He interrupts me. These people who make it to the jury phase, they tend to be more. Well, there are always like the leaders, right? The string pullers, but then you have a bunch of sheep. Usually, I've seen that's but my observation in the last few seasons, especially when I think of like players like Raven and Matt in particular during the Paul regime of 19. Who were just like, when it's our time to go, it's our time to go. And I don't think like Azza and these players are we're putting the whole fun plays together tonight. You know, different generations of the jersey. Yeah. So like, Jaemeel, is that just okay? I guess the question I have is this: are you always going to have these sheepish players? Have they always been part of the game? Have they been part of the Big Brother since the beginning?
Oh, okay. You kind of.
I was waiting for Jeff to stop with the microphone.
I was waiting for the question.
I know. I was trying to get it out. Have these sheep always been a part of the game and they got picked off early, or are they now just more abundant in the casting, and therefore they're the gamers, the players who really know how to work this game, are just have it too easy. They can get these people to do whatever they want, through like they're sort of, there's a adult and children almost in terms of like the level of comprehension around the game.
So yes and no. So here's the thing. There was always these type of players playing. But like people have gotten smarter and understand that you need to get the stronger players out, right? And when there's with that mentality, the stronger players eventually cannibalize themselves, and then you have one set of stronger people and weaker people. That's typically how it goes. Now you have the weaker people and the stronger people. Typically, if they have a good strategy component, can handle the weaker people and can maneuver them as appropriately um, to get them to the end, unless they slip on a banana peel. They're always classic banana peel, right?
Right. So and I guess I'm going with like for players like Xavier, players like Kyland, players like who was our winner last year, Cody. And
You
even
have to
Nicole
think about it for a
Frenzel.
second.
Yeah, congratulations, Cody. And like when Paul, he got robbed, I guess not robbed, but Josh won sort of unexpectedly. And then Casey, I guess in Tyler's case, because Tyler was the gamer, but Casey was a gamer too. She was just more subtle and not as charismatic and not as much of a TV character, I think too. So
like to Kylan?
She just said "Let's go" and that was it.
Well, I think like behind the scenes, like in terms of like my understanding of the feeds and her role in the Level 6 Alliance, they did like exchange information and they worked well as a team to make sure that the objective of that alliance was sought through, and they got and getting rid of the Fautes and those kinds of things. But eventually, and then Casey was thought to be someone that like Tyler, who I think is the Xavier of that season, like the more like the kind of the this person is the destined to win the season, right? This is going to be our winner. But even when Paul was going to win 19, but then didn't because Josh won as well. So could we see something like that where Derek F wins here instead of Xavier?
The only way Derek F wins, no.
It
No,
seems
dude.
like I
At
think
this
Xavier
point-
knows this, right?
No. Wait, does Xavier know that Big D's not going to win?
Yes.
I think everyone except Big D thinks that, honestly.
What is going on with Big D? Like, I don't get this man. Like, what's he talking about? Like, oh, my plan is not going to. You're not in control, Big
This
D.
is him from the beginning. This is him, but they just haven't shown it.
Why aren't they showing it? Like, why is this the first time I'm getting to see Big D in the way that you've described him, Jaemeel, the whole season, where he thinks he's masterminding everything, or he thinks his plan is working perfectly, and yet he has no control over anything ever.
Do you think, from a television executive perspective, would you show this man, right, being delusional all the way through, and people watching, seeing this man fall up, basically? Right? Or would you present him as the fun-loving, sassy, dude that they have, right? That they're like, he'll eventually be gone or he'll be carried to the end. There'll be other interesting characters. He's not affecting gameplay. Right?
What if he gets to the end though, Jaemeel, and then he starts like spouting off how great he was in this game, and everyone laughs at him, and then the whole audience is gonna go, "What?"
Like, they're gonna be crossing their fingers and hope. Or they better hope that they have an extra episode and just kind of it's like last time on Big Brother and just do like, this is what's happened that you missed.
I have a question. Me and Amanda were kind of discussing this. And I kind of want to ask both you guys because I already kind of know what Jameel's answer is, but I am curious to see what Dave's answer is going to be here. Okay. Who is a worse Big Brother player? Big D or Azza?
Ooh. I think Big D, who's worse? Who's it's the It's almost a draw for me. Like they're it's for me it's like they're both bad, and I think they're both easily manipulated. So, and I think they're both not well in tune with what the dynamics of certain things in the game are.
Dave, there's a couple of things I disagree with you with that statement.
Okay, Jaemeel, go ahead.
Okay.
What do you got?
So, easily manipulated? I don't think they're easily manipulated. The thought process of being easily manipulated means anyone can manipulate them, which is not the case. Xavier and Kylan are finding it extremely difficult to manipulate Big D because he just goes into business for himself stupidly and harms everyone's game. So that I would disagree on that last point. And I think Kylan and Xavier are now realizing how much behind the scenes work other people in the cookout were doing in terms of keeping like the wheels going. Like make sure Azza didn't get involved and do anything, make sure Big D didn't get involved and do anything that would be harmful to the plan. Because this dude is like leaking so much, it is ridiculous in terms of for Kylan and also for X. The second part to you is like you think that they're basically the same. I think now we can fully state that Azza can win competitions, right? More so than Big D. Because I think if it was Xavier versus Big D in that rolling competition, I think that if it is true, which I don't believe, that X was throwing it, Big D would still find a way to have X win. I'm at that point. I'm fully convinced now that this dude just either mentally or a combination of he just doesn't have it in him to win.
Okay, I have a question based on what you said, Jaemeel, because what I said to Amanda was that I feel like Big D is a player that is a GOAT, doesn't know he's a GOAT, and is kind of being like the idiot savant that's just getting to the end, which we've seen multiple times in Big Brother. This is Victoria, this is Spencer, this is from
Spencer.
Yeah, he's an idiot savant.
No, Gina Marie was their version.
She was also an idiot savant. There was two of them in that season. That's why it was kind of easy for anyone. But that's neither here nor there. Azza is the type of player that is so bad that when she even wins a competition and gets power, she doesn't even know how to use it. Like, I don't know. For me, Azza is a worse player than Big D. Big D is more delusional. I'll give you that, 100%.
I would disagree.
Okay. Why?
Okay.
Why is Big D? If Big D had power in this season at any point, I think he would have taken out a big player. You know, he would have taken out. It would have been a woman, but
probably Tiffany. He would have went after Tiffany probably before the cookout got to the cookout. If he had, because he was the most likely to go rogue, I think.
So, if Big D and Azza both had power, and it was at a pivotal time with the cookout, right? And Tiffany needed to not go. Do you think Azza would get Tiffany out or screw it up so Tiffany is gone? Or do you think Big D would screw it up or going to business for himself to get Tiffany gone?
Okay.
I know that's a very specific case.
Right. It's a very specific case. My point is Azza got down to a final 5 HOH and she not only let her closest ally go up in the block, her closest
You're under
ally.
the impression that Hannah was a close ally.
No, I'm not talking about Hannah. I'm talking about Big D. Big D ended up going up on the block, and she had the opportunity to not put both X and Kylan on the block, knowing that most likely one of those guys was going to win the veto, so that they were going to pull. And then she could have put up Hannah to replace, and got out whoever she could have saved Big D the block if that was her closest ally, and she didn't do that. She left Kylan off the block, and then he wins. And that was the biggest mistake to me. Like from Azza, just like didn't know how to play her HOH, and so for me, like I don't know. I agree with what you're saying. Big D is delusional, and that's a wild card. And I agree, Azza would make a more straightforward decision most of the time. But man, like it's tough to screw up that bad.
Azza was coming from her perspective of she's the type of player that sees point B and walks from point A to point B, and that's her method of travel. She just walks straight there, right? She doesn't look around to see if any cars are in the way. She just, hey, I need to get to point B. She just walks straight there. Throughout this season, the one thing that we've seen consistently is that no one has used a veto without the permission of the HOH, right? Which is wrong gameplay in Big Brother as a whole. But that has been the consistent thing that's happened, right? You can more or less say that is the house rule.
It's like the house rule, yeah.
Same thing like everyone deserves a pity vote, right? House rule. The only people that didn't get a pity vote is what? Tiffany, Hannah, right? Didn't get pity votes.
When they didn't want it to split to an HOH tie, it was more that the pity votes weren't in play here. Yeah, and I think like Oz's reaction tonight in some of her diary room sessions were a bit surprising to me. I guess it was Friday night, not tonight's episode, but Friday night's episode. There was a few times I raised a few eyebrows with Ozza, just like, she was saying like, I would feel played if Xavier puts up me and Big D now. Like, is that when you feel played? Like, is it, or is it, I think it's more about this veto, and I don't think you have an expectation necessarily that you should have a say in its use necessarily, like any more than, especially when you get down to this stage of the game, because you're at final 5 at this stage.
Everyone's saying that they have final say. They should have final say.
But the HOH should have final say.
No, like in terms, everyone's throwing in their are we talking about the veto for Final 4? Or are we talking about 5?
5. I'm talking about the 5.
5. It's the expectation. She's still playing by the cookout rules,
right? And so that would indicate bad player.
Well, yeah, like okay, we're under the impression that she's a terrible player.
I think we're arguing about who's the worst player, Big D or Ozza, and my response was I think they're both terrible.
Ozza has rules that she follows, and that's
she has a code.
She stays by it. She makes a deal, she stays with her deal. That's the type of player she is. That type of player isn't necessarily one that's should be holding power, because they can be easily manipulated. Because it's like, well, you said this, you're not going to change that, right?
She takes people at face value.
A to B, right? That's why she didn't work with Hannah, because she already had pre-existing deals, right?
Right.
So
conflict of interest for her.
She is a straightforward player.
She's a straight shooter.
If Hannah wanted to get in, Hannah should have put in work beforehand. She didn't. That's why she's gone. That's the only reason why she was gone. She would have been able. She would have been able to handily have that HOH situation not happen to her. And because she was sleeping at the wheel, and Ozza did what she did, Tiffany had a better relationship with Ozza. If it was Tiffany, Ozza would not have done that.
Why didn't Tiffany and Hannah, who are so closely aligned, try to make a deal with Ozza at the 6?
Tiffany was trying to make a deal with Ozza,
but she tried harder to make a deal with Kyland.
Was it too late at that stage to make that deal with Ozza? No,
it wasn't too late. It wasn't too late. Tiffany was putting in work, but there wasn't the consistency with Hannah and Ozza, who has not had a good relationship. And then they were able to
though. With the harmony.
Big blue couch, grab a seat and some popcorn with your friends.
They have worked together.
They have worked together
in harmony.
Musically.
Yes.
Right? But if Jeff, you yourself, if you had a choice between Ozza, Hannah, and Tiffany versus Kyland, Tiffany, and Hannah, you're taking the Kyland deal.
Of course. But this is the whole problem with like the girl power argument. They only use it when it's convenient.
Well, shouldn't you?
Well, yeah, but then it came around where it would have been convenient, and it didn't end up working out so well for Hannah, right?
We're also thinking about how the audience reacted on the outside, and there's a big chunk of the Big Brother fan base, especially the live feed fan base, that was definitely I think pulling for Tiffany and for Hannah, and for like to see these guys of the cookout men like Xavier, Kyland especially, and Big D actually, all three of them, like seemed the misogyny trampled down.
So there's nothing wrong with guys hooking up and going to the end. That isn't the problem. That isn't the misogyny part. The attitude in which they did it, that is the issue. It's not like Tiffany or Hannah was downplaying X or Kyland's ability, right?
Right.
Like
there was
we see the absolute flip side on the thing where they just disregard what was done.
Where you have like Big D, who seems to be a woman hater a little bit, and more than a little bit.
Amanda told me that Big D said something to the effect that like, oh, we can't let Ozza get to the final 2 because there's too many women on the jury and they'll vote for her just because she's a woman.
Yeah.
So, right. Which I think maybe 1 or 2 might, but overall, I don't think that's going to be a deal.
So Big D has been saying that for a while. Yeah. And Anna heard Hannah heard about it and complained about it, and Big D X was there. So when Big D said it again, X like, oh yeah, the women don't like it when you say that. Like, just
Mhm.
right.
Right. Shut up. Yeah. Which I
Well-
do think there is sometimes that happens in Big Brother where it's like, well, I'm just going to vote for this person because I relate more to this person because X reason, you know? And sometimes it is like the female thing, you know? And like, didn't Davon kind of vote for Nicole F to win because she was like,
Yeah, and she regrets it to this.
She regrets
Right.
it.
She'll
Well,
say otherwise.
I think people would vote. I think there are women who would vote for a woman winner, but women resent the idea that that you're telling them they're going to do that. You know, especially to
No, yeah.
vets.
Are they gonna look? Do we honestly think that Hannah and Tiffany are gonna vote Azza over X?
No, I don't think they will. No.
No, but I could see maybe like
Brittany.
a Brittany or a Claire. doing
Yeah,
it, you know?
I could see that, but to say that it's just an automatic given,
No.
Yeah,
no.
no. I said
Which
might.
is
One
the
or two
issue.
might. Yeah,
I get it's
right.
insulting, but it's still like it's just an opinion. Like it's not like he's committed.
He's also playing the game and he's trying to angle, it's a bad way to do it, but he's angling the guy angle because I think he said a few weeks ago, Big D said that he wanted to get to the final three with Kylan and Xavier because he thought for sure Kylan or Xavier would take him to the final two, which actually is a half decent strategy if you want to finish second place, which seems like kind of what he's doing, but he thinks he's going to win.
No, he deserves to be in the final two, Jeff. He said to me.
Right.
do you think Kyla's gonna take Big D over X?
But I think X will take Big D.
I think X will.
Yes.
Yes. And okay, and if somehow if Big D was the final HOH and he had to pick between Kylan and Xavier, who would he want to take?
He would take Kylan because he likes Kylan more.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, really?
I think he'll take X.
That's funny. That's interesting because I do think Big D has a chance to make an argument that would somewhat work if that happened. But if he just gets dragged to the end and he gives the delusions of grandeur that he's had all season, I want to watch that. I want to see the jury laugh in his face.
Groan. The groans that will come from that jury, will be
It'll be
more than
like,
Jackson Mickey.
If it's an Azza like Big D final, it's gonna be like vote for the worst. Like
which could happen because if Kylan goes and then it goes to the final three, Azza, Big D, and Xavier happens to lose the final three HOH, which could happen.
Azza is gonna take Big D.
Azza's gonna take Big D. Big D,
Yeah.
You think will take Xavier? Why would he do that?
Delusions of
grandeur.
I think he wants to bro down with his fellow Baldy, or was it
Yes.
as he says to Xavier? And
So here's an interesting thing. X was talking strategy with Big D and trying. I think we saw a little bit of it, but they cut stuff out of it when he was talking about the final HOH.
right,
and
and he floats this idea. What if we cut Kylan this week?
Yeah, so there's a better chance for them. But Big D was like, okay, well, you win part one, and then you'll part two.
Right.
You'll win part two, and then we'll face off against each other. And he's like, no, that's not how it works. Like, if I win part one, you're gonna have to face Azza in part two. And he's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
The dude did not understand the final HOH like structure
Rules.
at all.
Did he
Right?
watch the
It's
season?
been the same forever, right?
Did he not watch the season they gave him to watch?
I don't think he was paying attention.
He fell asleep. He fell asleep. He was snoring while in the final episodes.
So X is is looking at it like, okay, I can beat Big D in part one or part two for sure. And if he makes it to part three, I can beat him like that. If it's Kylan, there's a chance that Kylan could beat me in part one or part two or part three.
Oh yeah, Kylan is almost equally matched with Xavier in terms of I think ability to win. Like they're both mental and physical threats.
Yep.
But with Azza, X believes he can beat her in maybe one or two, right? But part three, there could be issues because Azza has her days. She has her days
Yes,
locked,
Ozza could win a part 3 for sure.
right?
If it's just a scale competition and it's
Yes.
just what
And
date is.
yeah.
But at the same
Yeah.
time, she can also beat Big D.
Yep.
So, like, he's like, the chances are it better for me to face Ozza, right? But Ozza won't take me. Kylan would take me though.
So it's all about what Xavier wants for his final 3 and what's
Well-
the best option for him.
Well, from X perspective, yeah.
Yeah.
From X perspective,
Oh yeah, I'm just trying to understand if I was Xavier, what's the I guess the best case scenario for Xavier is to go with Kylan and Derek F because both of those people take him to the final 2. So whether he wins or loses,
correct.
and he probably
But-
beats him at the final 2. So obviously Ozza has to be his target.
But we're looking from the outside in, and we're looking at Kylan definitely is going to take him, right? But X isn't so sure.
I
Now,
wouldn't be so
Big-
sure either.
Yeah, but Big D wants to have a final 3 where it's Kylan and Derek. Sorry, Kylan and X, which is the bad play because Ozza would definitely take him, and so would X.
What do you think that means to Derek F? Why? Okay, like he's been pretty close with Ozza throughout this game, but now he's like, you're not one of the boys, so you're not in my. I'm ready to see you go here. I'd rather Kylan stay in the game to these final 3. A guy he complains about not winning competitions and not being able to get there. Kylan is major competition, and he doubles his chances of accidentally winning one of these final HOHs just by getting Kylan out of here. You know, like if somehow Ozza gets disqualified or something or times out or who knows, right?
Yeah, like if Big D goes to the final 3 with X and Kylan, he's sitting on finale night hoping one of them takes him. That's what's happening.
That's all he'll be like. You never won a competition. You never won a veto. You never had a say, but you were on the block a few times and you always survived. So,
Which
kudos,
I don't
but-
think. Okay, I know it is in this modern day Big Brother, but that should not be a knock on a player. If you got to the end and never won a comp, that should be just as good as getting to the end and never being put on the block. You know, that should like the fact that you got to the end and you never won anything or had power is impressive in some way.
It's socially, yes, definitely. Socially, yes. Right? It doesn't like people put different values based upon their own thought process, and majority has resulted in comp wins dictating that things are more important than others.
Mhm.
Like the problem with Big D once again.
Right.
The problem with Big
Once
D is the agency.
Yeah.
There's no agency at all. At no point that we can see that he has done anything to result in actually anything like a result for the game. We have yet to see it, right? We can at least say,
Sorry.
right? The DR is the most that he's done in this game, right? We could at least say Ozza has won a competition. One competition Ozza has won.
One HOH and one veto, right?
No, just one
No,
HOH.
one HOH.
That's it.
That's it.
Okay.
She didn't even win a wild card. Neither, you know, like they won nothing. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
and she won a double eviction HOH, which isn't nothing, but like it was four players playing and it was rolling balls. And she had to win it. I'm not taking her credit away, but once she did win that competition, to me, what matters more is what you do with the power once you get the power. It's not winning the power. Winning the power is arbitrary. It's how you use the power that should matter.
So,
Right.
So, but why are we then putting value on X's earlier HOH win?
I don't.
A lot of people do, and
Yeah.
they're like, "Well, X won HOH earlier on." It's like, well, does that really matter when you have the committee working in the background, making sure that you don't screw up?
Where X gets credit is that, you know, he kind of took out players that were, you know, problematic to the cookout, and he was viewed as a player that was controlling things, even though I don't think he really was. He was just this big target that sat in the house the whole time and nobody went after him. That's always viewed as good.
I would say that, in my opinion, and this is just my perception of the game, I think that X has been running this game, but not solely. I think he's been running it with Tiffany, with Kyland.
But he hasn't been running it with them. You know, like
I think those three have been like the masterminds of the season. And I think that everyone else is maybe Hannah a bit. But like,
I think you're overvaluing X and undervaluing Hannah.
Yeah, I think that fine, fair enough, fine. The four of them.
That's just. I'm not saying facts. I'm just saying you're giving your opinion. I'm giving mine. Sorry, continue.
Right. Yeah.
Hannah, Tiffany, Kyland, Xavier are the four. Like they're the people who've been running the show since almost since week one.
Yeah, I don't view it that way. I mean, I really don't. I view it that the Cookout's been running the show for a while.
That is the Cookout. That is the brain trust of the Cookout. Hannah and DF are non-voting members of the Cookout.
No, they are.
Right?
They needed their votes to vote people out, Dave. They needed their silence to make sure that the alliance worked. To say that just because they won the comps, like Hannah and Xavier and Kylan, that they're running the house because they won the comps. No, the alliance was running the house. Azza and Big D could have blown up that alliance at any time and flipped the house if they had wanted to. They didn't want to. So to me, it's the alliance was running the house, not 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 people. It was all 6. That's how I look at it.
I disagree. I think Azza and Big D have been duds. I think that they are involved in conversations as much as like Tiffany and Xavier and them wanted to tell them, and they had to pacify them a lot because Big D wanted to blow up the alliance all season long, and Azza was just like, why are we lying to people? And why can't we do this?
But they didn't do it. They didn't do it. And they got to the 6. And once they got to the 6, then you got to see who's going to win based off who's good at competitions, and that's what we saw play out.
They also knew Azza and Hannah, or Azza and Big D, weren't good at competitions, and as Cookout members, they thought they were easy to, because like we talked about on Thursday. Like I thought that it was going to be Tiffany and Hannah versus X and Kyland at this stage, because they saw each other as the two sides of now that they were finally down to the 6, and Azza and Big D we can worry about later. Get the big threat out from the other side as soon as possible. From Tiffany's perspective, it was X. From I guess from Hannah's perspective, it was Kyland. And from
Oz's perspective, for a short bit, it was Kyland as well.
Right. Well, Azza has been up and down with Kyland, and then she suddenly made this deal where she had complete loyalty to him.
Well, she didn't make this deal. Kyland smartly picked her up.
Well, she didn't have to agree to it, but she did. So, and she's a stick to her guns kind of a lady, and if she makes a deal, she's going to see it through. And so, we just in that whole beginning of the episode, like where Hannah got voted out, and how she was like, "I want Hannah gone." She was like not trying to protect Hannah in this, but she was not happy with the fact that Kylan took Xavier off the block. She didn't like that, but she was not. She was kind of targeting Hannah, right? In this double eviction.
What was Hannah's whole argument to Kylan and Xavier? Was stroking their egos. You want to play with good players? I'm a good player. Get Big D out of here. How do you think Azza's going to take that? Why wouldn't the whole idea? Like, I get why Azza wanted Hannah out, because they weren't aligned, and even just because they're girls doesn't mean they should be. But I thought Azza should have done it because she's almost guaranteed to go here at the 4 unless they backdoor or Kyland or just front door him.
You could put Xavier and Kyland up if you're Azza too, but she's not going to do it because Kyland is now her ally.
Right, but that would be protecting Big D and Hannah. And if Hannah won the veto, then all of a sudden Big D has to go up anyway if Hannah plays it. She wanted Hannah on the block because she knew Hannah had a great chance to win that veto. And I think she made a mistake. I think she should have put Kylan and Hannah on the block, actually, now that I rethink about it now, because those two players had the best chance to win that veto. But X was right there too. And because she wanted to make sure Big D didn't hit the block. That was her whole goal. And he did anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, and the whole thing with Hannah being like, you know, or Azza in her confessional, she was like, Hannah came at me right after I won HOH, and I talked to her in the bathroom first, and she was rapid fire questions like, who are you gonna put up, who are you gonna do? And I could tell that like the Hannah Azza relationship is not necessarily the strongest outside of their rendition of Big Blue Couch. You know, like that they get along fine, but maybe don't have a super like they're just not close.
I don't think they
Jaemeel?
respect
They
each
talk
other as
game.
players.
This
Yeah.
must
They don't talk.
game.
They don't talk game, right? So they've been in this cookout for 10 weeks, but they're not really that tight. You know,
They don't respect
like,
each other as players.
they respect, but the relationship is sort of superficial.
Hannah had better relationship with everyone else in the cookout, with the exception of Hannah and Big D.
Was that kind of Hannah's maybe flaw in her game ultimately?
Well, she invested in the individual she thought were going to be there later in the game.
I work with the winners. Oz is a loser. Was that Hannah?
Not specifically, she didn't say that.
That's what
Someone
she was doing.
brought up an interesting point, listening to Taryn and company, that it was last week. So her final week, I believe, she surpassed Frenchie in the amount of DRs that she received.
Hannah did.
Yeah,
So that's what they were talking about. What Zingbot was talking about when they said she was invisible.
yeah. They have not. She has not had DRs like Frenchie. In the time that
Right.
he was there, had more DRs than Hannah.
Dang, Nab.
Why is Hannah anti DR?
Because every time she's in the DR, she was saying some sort of mean comment about somebody.
Wait, why do you say she's anti-DR? It's
I
not
use
her,
it-
she who decides.
Right.
Oh, you mean they just don't call her to the DR very often because they don't like what
No,
they
they
get?
didn't use anything from her DRs. Like, everyone goes in the DR. Some more than others, yes, but like, she has not been presented.
The only time I have like Hannah, you're right. Most of her clips are like just live clips or stuff like her talking to Brent or whatever. But the one like this is one of them.
In no universe was I ever going to use the veto on you,
You know, the other one was this.
Sketch B.
So she's had that. I don't know. Like I don't know if she's a popular character or not.
One other thing. I don't know if Amanda told you this, Jeff, but when ranking people, like in another program's coverage, they do rankings for players each week, and they have a number system based upon like 10 being what Dr. Will and Derek and Dan, and 1 is Victoria as the worst. The worst
She's the lowest of the standards.
yes.
Tell me about this. Yes.
People are seriously thinking of removing Victoria as the worst Big Brother player of all time, as like the example, the prototype as the worst, or creating a lower value than 1 to
0.
0.5 for Big D.
Is that fair? Is that
Is it-
fair?
But is it? I think it might.
He's
be.
He's a worse player than Victoria.
Yes.
How is like
That's
French?
harsh.
How is Frenchie a better player than Big D?
Frenchie could win a competition.
So he literally, again, it doesn't matter about winning competitions. It's about
I mean,
what
week
you
1
do.
HOH, having a plan, right? His plan was overtly ambitious, right? His maneuvering was ill thought, but at least you can understand, you can track his thought process. You can track.
I
His
always
thought
wanted to start an alliance called the Slaughterhouse.
Remember that great
name, I'll check it
Slaughterhouse
out.
Alliance? Remember the Slaughterhouse? They were amazing.
Are we arguing like that Devin shouldn't come into this either? He was also in 16. I mean, there's some.
I guess it's a player that makes it far in the game, but is a really ineffectual player. I think is what we're
Right.
talking about. Like when you compare
Right.
like a Gina Marie, or I guess a Derek F, or Victoria, Beast Mode Cowboy, even I
Yeah.
think
But,
is.
but wouldn't we? Gina Marie at least was like the right hand person to power, right? And not like a just
Not till Exterminators. Not till the Exterminators really happened, and that's really near the end of that season.
Yeah,
Like
she wasn't like really with McCrae and Amanda and all those. Was she?
and McCrae,
She's
McCann,
Aaron.
and Andy were kind of more, and Judd and them were
Right.
more the doing those things, and I guess Spencer a little bit.
Yeah,
And then
she was
Gina
there.
Marie flipped onto their side because Gina Marie was like with Aaron and the Mean Girls and all that, you know,
Melissa.
against Candace for a long time. You know, she lost
Howie.
Howie, you know, and all those things. Yeah, and like I guess every season has a player that gets farther than anybody likes. You know, a player, this player doesn't deserve to be here anymore.
But the level of play with those characters differs. Like
Mhm.
Gen City was kind of garbage, but she wasn't absolute garbage, right? She was just ineffectual, but she wasn't delusional.
She wasn't delusional. See, okay, so are we just talking about delusional here?
No, I think it's a combination of things where it like creates a perfect storm, a perfect storm.
Okay, because like I don't know, players that never get power and go far in the game but are delusional, I can almost like I can't forgive it, but like I can't
Condemn
they're
it.
in that I can't condone or condemn it because like they're in that house for like 90 days. They never have power the entire time. And what are they supposed to do? Like just be down on themselves and just be like, you know what? Not going my way. You know,
like,
and that's it.
Dr.
You know?
Will would have periods where we'd have absolutely no quote unquote power, but
Right.
yet hold all the power. Right?
Yes.
He would just manipulate and scheme and maneuver. But like with Big D, there's no maneuvering. He's just like a whale that has like ineffectual gravity and people push and pull things in his orbit. Like he's the only one that didn't have anyone to contribute, like to take care of or to pair up with the cookout. Right?
I guess we have to ask ourselves, what's the number one reason Big D's still in the house? The number one reason, Dave?
He's easy to beat.
Okay. So, and Jaemeel, easy to beat in the end or easy to beat in competitions?
Both.
I don't even think that's the reason though.
What do you think the reason he's still in the house, Jaemeel?
Because making a deal with him in what was it, day 14 for X?
Well, this came up tonight. Yeah, day 13. He said I made a final two with Derek F on day 13. First, we've heard of it on the show. You know, and he's like, that's the one I want to honor because that's my best chance in my mind of winning 750,000.
That's why you make deals with everyone, and then.
But it's just the way Xavier. Like tonight in the DR, like Xavier and Kylan in particular were just annoying me the way they were selling me this double eviction stuff and the way Xavier was like selling, well, you know, all these things. Even when like Kylan voted to keep Derek F, he's like, you don't even know the things that Derek F has done in this game. We
never got an explanation as to what that meant.
No, because it's a complete fraud. And so it like, you know,
to me as an audience member, that has to be explained. That's like, I have to close off that hanging line.
There was no time. We had to have the CSI Vegas competition go on for like 25 minutes.
Also, by the way, when they're smiling, when that clip is playing, I'm like, this is creepy. There's like dead bodies and they're like,
skulls.
Like, this is creepy.
I'm surprised I understand. I'm surprised we haven't been complaining about that competition. Like because to me, all this time could have been just discussing that horrible like HOH competition.
Okay, I actually liked it. So we're gonna be on opposite ends here because I thought it
was bad.
What? Why was it bad? Explain.
Too long.
Okay, you mean for TV it was too long?
Yeah, it went on. It was by the time we got to Kylan, it was like kill me. Like what the hell? Like you're gonna have to investigate my CSI here.
Okay, that's not what I meant by when I was a good. I think it was a really.
The explanation alone felt like it took 5 minutes.
I thought it was a very fair competition, and that's what I was more referring to. That it was actually it had nothing to do with athletic prowess. It had nothing to do with trivia. It was more observation.
It was like an escape room.
Yeah, it was an escape room, and anybody can win that.
Boring.
It was boring. I would have to agree with Big D there. I was like, I just want to fast forward to see who wins. Like I didn't care.
I couldn't fast forward. I had it on demand, and I couldn't fast forward through this. I'm just waiting. Like,
it was too.
And I just felt like it's a whole lot of work for nothing. Where I don't understand the event design where it just seems like, hey, um, we have to move the clipboards over. They could have just had the board and just select it instead and just say this is the one. Like I know why Kylan lost this. If you were paying attention, he lost it because he thought it was a good idea to eliminate all the choices that didn't work and flip them over,
Yeah.
each one over. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You're insane. You're absolutely insane.
He lost by 5 minutes roughly to Xavier.
It was 4 minutes or something. Yeah, but yeah, he was very proud that he got it on the first buzzer beat. So
Yeah, because it took him forever to do it. Like, just imagine, like, they cut, like, he seemed like the quickest in the recap of what he did, but it was like slow as ass, 5 minutes, and that would have been just flipping things over. Or like, I'm gonna study each of the little marks to make sure it's correct.
But him
You
and
know?
Big D had very similar times.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and
Big D.
right, he's not good at these things, right? We saw he took probably a long time, and Kylan maybe was fast and got it right on the first try, but he was so methodical with it, just like he is with his strategy, that just it cost him, and Xavier just hustled, and then you saw him afterward. Kylan's like, "I'm so stupid. How could I be so stupid?"
He was so loud that Big D went to check on him.
Yeah, he's like, "You all right, man? You beat me." If that makes you feel better. He's like, that doesn't make me feel better.
No, I was supposed to beat you.
Yeah. You're Big D. That's why we kept you around. So, Jeff, back to your question, because you asked Jaemeel and I, like, why do you think Big D is still in the house? Where do you sit on this? Like, why do you think they've kept him for so long?
Okay.
Especially when they got to 6, and they could have cut him right at the 6, like they were talking about.
I think they decided to keep him well before the 6, like well before the cookout really had a stranglehold even on the game. I think the boys knew that if they could get to 6 with Big D and they could keep him loyal, which they knew they could because he is kind of doing the misogynist stuff, that they were gold. And that's, to me, why he's still in the game, is because the two big boys decided he was their best path to the end a long time ago.
Yeah, and maybe didn't tell us or tell even the Alliance members as much or as such, right?
Right.
Like, but I think I tend to agree.
All us guys are together and sticking it out to the end.
I think as long as there were women in the game, there were energy that Big D can focus on, and that was definitely to the benefit of the two guys in the Alliance. At the same time, I think Tiffany had no qualms in keeping Big D at 6. Her focus was on Xavier because Big D is so obvious in terms of his thought process from her perspective that, like, a known like that can't win is perfect to kind of work around.
Right.
Okay. Also, Big D was also effective for not only Cookout but the boys to convince the girls that they needed to get out, that the Cookout didn't exist, that, like, you saw a bunch of scenes in the show where, like, with Alyssa, like, oh, well, I'm the last POC, and it's like, am I next because I'm halfway? And no, girl, like he was good at deflecting, and I wouldn't have bought it, but Alyssa did, Claire did, you know what I'm trying to say, like, so
my question is like, do you think Derek F is a worse player than Josh Martinez?
No, Josh Martinez is way better player than Derek F.
Yeah,
I think they're the same player.
No way.
Josh Martinez was very self-aware and understood that Paul was the villain of the season.
Not that self-aware.
He understood that Paul was the villain of the season, and he had great goodbye messages to all of them. That's why he won the game.
Yeah, and Paul was not taking any kind of credit whatsoever.
Right. Well, yeah. Paul kept blaming everybody else, never taking responsibility for his lies or anything like that. And Derek F, but to me, Derek F is just like, it's the same level of volatility and goes off the handle and wants to go rogue and do his own, go in for business for himself all the time. but never
Western
gets to.
terminology is just
You know,
He wants to, but he doesn't. Like he wasn't doing that. Like he keeps relying on not only the cookout but the two boys to make sure that he keeps getting further in this game. You saw it tonight where he went on the block and he was a little upset, but he was like, I'm just gonna chill out and I'm just gonna hope this goes my way, and it did. And that's how he's played the whole season, is exactly like that. And that's not necessarily bad gameplay. You know, a bad game player would get pissed off and go, why am I on the block? What the hell, guys? You know, that's what a bad game player would do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I don't think I'm kind of on this thing where I don't think Derek F is the worst Big Brother player that ever has lived. Like he's not, but he's not the best either. He certainly doesn't. He's delusional and thinks he deserves to be in the final two. And I just don't think
Frenchie to me is a worse
much worse season.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's hard to like see it, but
you hate this man so much, Jaemeel. You're you're blind with rage.
It's not hate. It's not hate. It's not hate. He just thinks that
he's trash. He calls him trash all the time.
Well, I see why Amanda says the same thing. Okay, Amanda has the exact same opinion that Jaemeel has on Big D, that he is the worst Big Brother player of all time, that he's delusional, that it's a trifecta. It's a delusional, bad game, bad comp player, and bad relationship manager. You know, and you know,
trash,
so
wait, hold on a second. Being trash isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world. I refer to myself as being legit trash. Straight up.
Well, I would not call you that, but
that's fine.
Go on.
I've worked my magic on you for you to have a different opinion about me. But at the same time, right? Like I can understand a trash player. You can work with a trash player, right?
Here's another example of that.
Of a trash player? Well, Devin is.
Devin?
Eva Marie. Like if Eva Marie had power week 1, like you don't think she would do the exact same thing that Devin or Frenchie did, right?
Yeah,
make some elaborate scheme that would, just seems too unwieldy. They're able to build up like their case throughout the season. Like they can find the way. If Devin didn't get any power, Devin could have lasted a while.
Yeah, a little longer than he did. Yeah, well, yeah, Devin and Frenchie had very similar paths, right? Where
do you think if Frenchie was still in the game, do you think Frenchie would not have won? I don't think a good portion of the cookout would be able to function because it functioned on relationships and pairs, right? And he was the one calling out pairs from the get-go. There's no way that they would have been as effective if Frenchie was still in the game.
Yeah, it would have been a very different game if that had been the case. But we didn't get to see Frenchie for long enough to know how long term he would have compared.
We saw more than Hannah.
We saw him.
As I mentioned, Gen City. Who else?
You know what? We should get a whole season of Gina Marie, Devin, Gen City, Big D, Frenchie. Let's throw them
all these
in
big
the
personalities with trash gameplay. Have at it.
Yeah. Just see what they do. That's why I want don't throw any masterminds in. Only people who can barely.
They all think they're masterminds.
It'll just be called.
They think they're masterminds, but they're not.
Big Brother Trash season 24.
Julie Ken constantly refers to this as being the mastermind season, and they're like, "Oh yeah, they recognize my brilliance. This is great." Right? Extra long DRs, please. Have the DRs on live feeds. Right?
Instead of Big BB All Stars, BB Trash Stars. I'm here for it.
I'm here for it. Like, just call it what it is. Yeah, and like, and get or second chances or something like that. You know, if you want to be nicer. People who like fizzled out, all pre-jury people, maybe even.
Victoria,
Raven.
Get Raven back. Oh my god!
Get all the really bad
Raven,
players.
Victoria, Gina Marie. Right. Like, who's going to win competitions? It'll be like, we have to put a timer.
Someone's got to win.
Devin will be back, and he'll win everything.
The following week, he'll get voted out.
Yeah. Okay, so after the whole competition, which we talked about, I thought it was too long. Jeff thought it was just right.
No, I liked the competition
He
as
liked
far
the
as,
competition, yeah.
but I didn't like how long. I didn't like how long it was, but that's because there's no gameplay to like. There's nothing
But
going on.
then we got all this stuff afterwards, where it was pretty much it was Thursday night. It seemed like the aftermath of the HOH. Like they're still in the same clothes from Thursday night, largely for a lot of this episode. Xavier's just wearing the same basketball shorts and stuff, and like they all do. Like Oz's got the pink on and whatever until like I guess the next day when they were doing when they had the ceremony, when they actually did the nominations. So Xavier was crying when he after he found out he won. He goes in and he does a little fist
Such
pump.
a woman, look at being so emotional.
Yeah, he's like, I've won almost $1 million. I can taste it. I can, or like Kylan says, I can feel it, not just taste it. I can feel it. You know,
I so want to cheer for this man. I so want to cheer for
Xavier. Yeah, like because he's just so entitled. You know, it's hard. I guess that's his biggest detractor.
Dave, I'm gonna be able to like in a couple months. I'll be able to walk away and like be fine with him being the winner. I'll be fine with it. Even Kylan, I'll be fine being the winner. I'll walk away. You know, all the sins from the past just disappear from me, right? Because I'm so in the weeds, right? It's just it's just so hard right now. Like if Ozza won, if like Ozza won out for some reason, I could even feel fine with her winning. I could.
Sure, I can be fine with any of these people winning.
I don't care who wins ever.
Like when I say care about winning, right? Mind you, it's not. I wanted Dan to win, but I don't discredit Ian from winning. Ian won. Ian did a great job, right? Andy, people hated Andy's rat floater game.
Right.
It's still a win, and you know I can absolutely see it. Right? Hey, if they call me the worst Big Brother player of all time, and I still walk away with that check, it doesn't matter to me.
Like when Josh Martinez won, a lot of people said this is like he's like the worst player to ever win. But you know, it's
I will pool my tears into a bowl, use some food coloring, and use it to sign my check. I don't care. I don't care. Right? You won.
I was thrilled when Josh Martinez won, Dave. It was one of the only times at the end where I cheered because I sometimes
Who's clicking? Whoever's clicking, please stop.
It's not me.
Man, you're so OCD. What's it's like I hear something in the background. Stop it. Dave, there's a tap that's running in your house. Please stop it immediately. Go ahead, Dave.
You can listen back later. You'll know what I'm talking about.
Like for me, Josh Martinez played a good game. Like he was just unlikable at the beginning, and Paul was running the house, and everything was going Paul's way. And Christmas, all these people were just like his sergeants and his, you know. And Josh was a part of it, and then he turned, and he actually turned. So I cheered for him. You know, that's what I cheer for. I don't cheer for players like Ozza or these players that just go along the whole season and just, or Big D, and just go, I hope I win.
Like they're accidentally going to win or something.
Yeah. Like, I don't like gameplay like that. I want to see some sort of active.
You want agency.
You want someone to like race up and grab that torch and say, I'm the winner. I'm the king of the mountain or the queen of the mountain, if you will, and you know they went out, especially in Survivor. I know this about you. You love to see like somebody come alive at the end and like sort of win the respect of the jury.
Well, in Survivor, it's a little bit different because a lot of you can. It's the only in Big Brother this can't happen, but in Survivor you can win out immunity. Once you get to the individual stage, you can just keep winning immunity idols like Mike Holloway did or whatever.
Yeah,
and you can do that, and it's kind of exciting sometimes to watch. The problem is it's telegraphed. Like Survivor, the editing, you're like, oh god, he's gonna win, you know, because
you're not gonna get a Purple Kelly edit.
Right. They're going to show him he's going to get the most DRs or her, or whoever wins out like that. That's what occurs. In Survivor, what I respect is getting a majority alliance to vote against their interests, like Hans did. You see Boston Rob do this quite often. Like, these are the players that I think really were impressive. to be able to like Dr. Will in Big Brother, like you mentioned earlier, Jaemeel. If you can never win a competition and get everyone to vote your way, which like I can see why Big D has these delusions, because I think he fancies himself a Dr. Will, and I'm
Or
guessing
Derek Levasseur.
no, Derek Levasseur won
That's what he said.
competitions
He always says in his interviews, "I'm like Derek Levasseur,"
because he watched the season.
That's the delusion. That's where you're like, you are
I
not
think that's
Derek
the only season
Levasseur.
he's watched.
It's the only season he watched, and if he had watched Dr. Will before, I think it would be more. I think he would have played that angle in the DR more, because, like, you know, like he would have been like, I don't even care about winning competitions, but the fact that he cares so much every time he loses hurts him. And if he acted like it doesn't matter, I'm going to rely on my social game, I think he would have a bit more respect. But it's because, that's kind of how I look at him.
If he watched any Dr. Will Boogie seasons, that first week he would have been chill touting it up with Frenchie.
Yeah, maybe. Or with Frenchie or with Azza, maybe, but not. I don't know if Azza would have.
Azza's Boogie.
Yeah, Azza's Boogie.
Hey, Azza, ring. Azza's like, what's going on? Azza, pick up the phone. I don't understand what you're talking about.
What's a phone?
It's like, oh, Han, hello. It's like, what's going on? Who is this? Azza, it's me. I'm right beside you. It wouldn't be able to work.
How come, why is it since Boogie and Dr. Will, two guys that always went into the DR together, we don't see that ever again? We don't ever see players go into the DR again together.
They only do that when there's like, oh, we're chained together, or we have to do this, or America's favorite player, which, duh, like
Team America.
Yeah.
When they used to do that stuff.
But how did Dr. Will and Boogie do that? Like, did they convince production, hey, we just want to go in the DR together? Or did how did that
Maybe
happen?
it worked more like a speaker's corner booth in the old times. I don't know.
No, I don't think so.
I think they were called in together. I just don't know how did they get away with that, and and people were never like
suspicious.
Hey, it's definitely suspicious if they're
Well, now people count and pay attention to what people are doing in the DR. Like, oh, he's in the DR again. Like, what's going on?
Right, because Dr. Will had the virtue of playing in the early years of the game, just like those early Survivor players and like a lot of the other reality shows. They have the benefit of being first and being sort of innovators, but it's also just as likely that you'll fail because you're trying something new. So it's risk reward. It's credit was quick to do.
Well, he said he's going to play Survivor one of these days when everyone forgets him.
Big D said today, guys, I know we're not on spoilers, but this doesn't matter. Big D said today, he goes, he doesn't think Janelle is a legend. And then Oz and Kylan both tell him that Janelle is absolutely a legend. Big D says, I want to be a legend, a statement, a star.
Yeah, okay. Maybe not.
It's an eye roll. He's an eye roll and a half. I get it.
He's an eye roll and a half for sure. Okay, let's go to spoilers if we can, because there's nothing left from this episode really worth mentioning, right? I never longed for the days of Ziggy Marley so much. It's he's Friday, sort of Final Four HOHs, because the Final Four HOH is the most boring HOH of them all. And sometimes they bring in they do a recap episode here, or they bring in Ziggy Marley, or they bring in whoever.
Why is CSI in Vegas considered a new show?
I know, it's just CSI.
It's like the Star Trek Enterprise of CSI, right? They're going back to Vegas, and Grissom's back.
It would be Brave New World, but it's still a different show than CSI.
The original.
It's
the original.
It's like
CSI.
Bringing back Law and Order and be like Law and Order New York.
Law and Order Manhattan.
No.
That was what Law and Order was. It was all Manhattan.
And I hate procedurals, so.
Oh, that was the other thing I said to Jane, and I'm like, why is every show like it's either cops or crime scene investigators, NCIS, or they're hospital people, or they're firefighters, and they're always played by models, and they're on these trashy shows with bad writing, and they're all shot like CSI Miami.
Unfortunately, Dave, people like my fiance watch those shows religiously.
Is Amanda? Is Amanda the one I have to blame for this? Because I'm like, who watches this?
There's a lot of people that do.
A lot.
Unfortunately.
Clearly, they're making money off of it, but I'm like, I feel so disconnected. I'm like, this does not appeal to me in the
But
least.
the thing is, they can pick it up every. They don't have to watch every episode.
Right.
They
It's
can
just
watch
like
every
it's just
show.
back. It's just TV. You don't have to think
It's
about much.
it's a straightforward formula that is cheap to make. It isn't intensive for the actors involved. Like you can just pump out a ton of episodes. The budget is like you can do like 3 or 4 CSI procedural shows versus one sci-fi show.
Right. But why do people like watching that?
Because it's just like, people like kind of like watching cops and keep, watching firefighters. And it's like, oh, they're heroes.
Doctors, nurses, paramedics.
Even the same reason why people watch sequels. People watch sequels not necessarily because a sequel is going to be good. It's because it's a known quantity. It's a known concept that they can wrap their head around, right? What is harder to understand? People describing what like the Matrix is versus someone going, "Hey, we're making a Jurassic Park 2." Right?
Right.
And people might say, well, the Matrix was a success. Yes, and for every Matrix, there's the 13th floor, there is Strange Days, there's Event Horizon, there is Sunshine. There's a multitude of high concept sci-fi movies that people are like, what?
Lawnmower Man.
Lawnmower Man, right?
That was
Right?
a deep cut for the Lawnmower Man.
Right?
Not
I thought the
really.
13th floor would have been considered a deep cut, but
How about we go into the spoiler section now?
Should we,
And just
Dave?
I think we should. Mary's here. She said she missed the whole show. Oh, sorry, we are off. We're on the wrong night or the right night or whatever. But let's get into it. If you're tuning out here, I'm going to plug the shows at the end. But check out our other channels and everything else. But we're going to get right into the spoilers, and then I'll plug all our different programs at the end. Here we go. There you go. All right.
Sorry.
We are now in spoiler section, so we are looking ahead to Wednesday, this veto. And they kept saying tonight's episode, the final 4 veto is what it's all about. We already kind of knew this. HOH is just kind of being immune, right? Well, Daryl Clark, he let us know, I think today, who won the veto? I think it was yesterday. Yeah. Jeff, who is it?
It's your man, Dave. X gonna give it to you.
X gonna
Stop,
give it to you.
drop, shut him down, open up shop. It's a Rough Rider. Whoa. Yeah.
Why?
Here's the deal. That when the HOH wins the final 4 veto, I never like it. It sucks because they just basically get to decide who votes.
Well, they get to rig it to however they want. So
actually, it can be good. It was good the one year with season 14 when I believe Danielle was HOH and won the veto and saved Dan so Dan could vote, and then Dan voted out Shane.
So I rewatched this recently because I love that season. So Dan told Danielle that he trusts her, but he doesn't think that Shane trusts him. And he wanted to prove to Shane that he trusts him. So the best way to do that is to put the trust in him that he will save Shane, right?
Yes.
And then Danielle convinced Shane this.
Yes,
and
he was not a fan of it, but yeah.
And then when she saved Dan, all you hear is Ian go, "What?"
What?
And then when Dan does his speech and then votes out Shane, all you hear is Ian go, "What?"
Yeah.
But in moments like that, you understand why there was a case for Dan to win, right? And why Ian shouldn't win is because things like that where Ian had no control over, right? And the only reason why he was saved was because Dan had bigger fish to fry, right?
right.
So,
But Danielle didn't win that season, I know. So she obviously it didn't go well for her.
yeah, because
she didn't make final 2. She was the 3rd place.
Yeah, Ian won final HOH.
Could that happen to Xavier, Jeff?
It could, but I mean, Xavier's not, going up against Dan and Ian here. Like, let's go.
Wait, who's the Ian in this scenario?
Is
Dan-
Kylan Ian?
No, Kylan would be Dan.
Kylan's Dan?
Wait, I thought Xavier's who? Danielle. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kylan's Dan.
So
Let's
who's
say
Ian?
Ozza or Big D.
Big D, I guess.
I guess it has to be Big D if he makes it through here. Yeah.
No, wouldn't it be Azza?
I guess. Okay. Well, I guess the
If
better
Ozza
question
makes
here
it.
is who is Xavier who does Xavier want to target? Who does he want to go here? Because he was saying it seemed like tonight's episode was indicating that he wanted Kylan to go now. He wants to cut Kylan. He doesn't really want to sit next to him at the end. That's not like he knows that's kind of
He wants the best
risky.
case scenario for himself.
yeah. He's not. He likes to hedge his bets. Like he's a methodical player. You know, I respect it. It's boring, but I respect it. So wouldn't if you were Xavier's shoes, that is the logical thing to do. Right? He's not like Kylan, who's like this idealist who wants to beat the best versus the best.
He can't trust Kylan for the final HOH. He does not want to give up that control.
Right.
Now,
Dave, do you want to watch the biggest blind sign ever? I have it on the share screen.
Sure.
we hold on. We could no.
1 sec.
You're gonna have to. Shane
Yeah.
want to get out of Dodge. I'm sorry. I love that.
No, that was good. Yeah, like it's okay. So could Xavier won't be in that position on this week himself. He'll be if he has the veto here. So he wants to target Kylan. So therefore, who does he have to give the vote to ensure that Kylan goes? It has to be Ozza.
That's the problem. That is the ultimate problem. He doesn't want to give it to Ozza because even though he feels that Ozza would if he makes a deal with her, she'll follow through, right?
Yes.
It will look bad for Big D because Big D will like, what, you don't trust me to do it? Because that's what Big D is going to say. But at the same time, if he gives it to Big D and has Big D make the decision, he might take Kylan.
Well, yeah. Should Xavier trust Derek F to make the right decision here? For like, will he make a deal and follow through with it, or is Derek F too unpredictable? I think Xavier maybe knows. I don't know. It's gonna be a tough one for him because he can't really trust. The problem here is that he's like, I can't count on Kylan to do the best thing for my game. I can't count on Ozza to do the best thing for my game, or Big D. So therefore, but he can't control them.
He
either.
can't control it. That's why the winning HOH for Final Four is difficult because you get safety, but you lose power in terms of choosing who is to be eliminated.
Right. And once they have the power, they can do whatever they want with it.
Well, yeah, it's not like, oh, no, I'm going to take it back so I can give it to another person who's going to do what I want.
Yeah. Whoever he leaves as the sole voter.
And at the same time, if he goes and says, hey, Ozza, as HOH, I want you to do this for me, right? There's always the tinkling in the back of his mind that Ozza's such a straight shooter that, like, she might feel a certain ways that we're going back to the old HOH controls the veto and tells it how it's supposed to be used, right? And we're just a week removed where I basically just, we just saw it not be played out that exact same way.
Meaning, sorry, what's the
Kylan saved X during Oz's HOH.
Yes.
A clear violation of the sacred unwritten rules of the HOH-dom.
That only
Right.
counts in like the pre-jury phase.
But you have to understand that, like, you're not playing with adults. Right?
Yeah, right. Right.
There's always the tinkling in the back of the head is like, what if this is the time that she's like, I'm gonna be the player that I always wanted to be, right? Jeff wants the one that Jeff wants me to play as, right?
Yes. Right. Well, okay. And that would be amazing if Ozza, like, all of a sudden, like, okay, I make this deal. Then she like goes back on the deal and I guess she would get rid of Kylan. It's like, what's the fear here is that Xavier, or that she would keep Kylan and vote out Derek F. Like, I think
No.
Xavier knows.
X is also worried about the final HOH. So prior to this, right, which isn't spoilers, whenever this Final Four veto is, the customer rule in gameplay is you don't talk about what's going to happen because it's premature, because you don't know who's going to win veto, right? And who's going to control what vote? Because if you say something one way, it can be construed as negative the other way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So X had that conversation with Big D. Big D went and had a conversation with Kylan, right? And it was implied, like, he's like, "Hey, you're gonna take me to the end, right?" And he's like, Why would you say that? We've always been good. Has something changed? Is there something to be worried about?" And it's like, no. It's all good. And Kylan was like, I feel hurt by by your question. Why you question my loyalty all of a sudden? So then Big D went back to X and told him that he had a conversation with him, and he's like, "Why would you have a conversation with him? Why would you give him the opinion or the thought that we could possibly betray him? Don't do that. Don't talk to him." And Big D's like, "Okay, you're right. I jumped ahead. I shouldn't talk to him." So he goes ahead and talks to him again, right? To try to ease things out, and the conversation basically leads to, you know what? Don't worry. We all trust each other. And it's like I don't want to vote you out or anything like that. Like, I don't even want the power. I don't even want the blood in my hands. So, Kylan's like, well, X could just give me the veto, and I can vote.
I just gave you a veto, X. Why don't you give me a veto?
And there'll be no problem. And it's like, oh yeah, I'll try to see if I can talk to him about it. So Big D goes back to X and tells X this. And then once again, X is like, what are you doing? What, like, if let's say Azza wins, right? Kylan could just turn around and say, hey, this is what they were going to do for me and get you out, right? And it's not like Big D can effectively lie about the situation. So
Right.
that's why you don't talk until Final Four veto is done, because you don't want to like
show your cards.
Like, yeah, you don't want to show your cards. You wait until the hand is dealt, right?
And not only do you wait till the hand is dealt, you do what we showed you earlier, what Dan did. You wait until the moment you're casting your vote. That's when
because that guy didn't know that was coming to that
TV.
moment.
No, and neither did Danielle, and even neither did Ian. Only Dan knew what he was doing there, and that is the best way, not only for TV, but to really do a good blindside and to get the credit and everything. Why we look at Dan as the best player probably in BB history.
He was able to get Danielle to understand and fall in line with him right after this.
But he lost the final vote, right?
Yeah.
So
okay, but okay.
Didn't Danielle vote for him though? Still.
Yes, and so did Janelle. Janelle was actually out of the jury, but Janelle stood up after and said that you all are a bunch of bitches. Dan deserved to win this season, and you all gave it to Ian because you didn't respect his gameplay. His gameplay was what this game encourages.
He got Russell Hansed. He got Tyler Crispin.
Well, and also at the same time, they were like, you only played half a season. Which
that was the other problem.
And the whole thing where he came in as like a mentor, and then he like became part of the game, which I think is kind of dirty as well, and like not wouldn't have been a clean win.
That was production. That was more than
that's not his fault, but it just I think it's cleaner to have.
That's like saying Russell, had an unfair advantage playing the second season, and nobody knew who he was on an All-Star season.
No, the closest example would be Paul in his second chance, getting that like 4 weeks of immunity.
Yeah, guys, I gotta show you this that just came in from the BB Brother updates. BB Big Brother Daily. It's Derek was saying to Xavier, "I'm hoping I'm crying when I come out the door, so no one knows who I voted for." And Xavier goes, "Wait, no, that's not how that works. Because if you're in the final two, you don't go in to vote in the diary room." And he goes, "What?" I'm saying it. He doesn't understand that in the final two, you don't get to vote.
What does he mean? I'm saying it in front of everyone.
Like he thinks he just stands up in his like final speech and says, "I am voting for myself."
Like he doesn't like. This is
okay.
This is what we're talking about, Dave.
He's definitely the most clueless player I would say, in BB history.
Doesn't even know how this game works.
He's unbelievably clueless and delusional. And so I understand why people say, 0.5, like why he belongs on that scale. I get it. But at the same time,
Yes.
there are
What?
there are things that I think are. No, I didn't see it. But
Did you all see that?
I heard about
Mary's
it. I heard about
asking, did you all see the cuddle shut down by X to Ozza? So X was cuddling with Ozza?
No, Ozzo was talking game and asked to cuddle, and he's like, no.
He just went, nah. Like, he just went, you know what? I'm good.
Yeah. I don't need to do that anymore. It's not good for my game.
Yeah, you're going home probably, Ozza. So Big D's going to decide. But...
I don't
Cold. That's cold, Xavier. Yeah.
I don't think Oz is going home.
You think Kylan's going home?
He might be.
He's going to go to jury, more specifically.
Well, yeah.
The whole
he
term
does-
"going home" is
Yeah.
when you're not going home. It's appropriate in the pre-jury phase, but it's.
Did you see this? We should also be talking about this schedule for Big Brother for the rest of
the week.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, is there any other spoilers or news? So,
No.
the ceremony hasn't actually happened, right? So that we
No.
don't. So he hasn't actually used it. So we're okay. We're gonna be. So let's talk about the whole schedule for the week and everything that's coming after this. And so thank you for staying here with the spoiler section. Let's not have any questions before we sign off tonight. But we're coming up on almost an hour and a half. So here's Mary saying she asked to cut it for 5 minutes and he said no. He says I'll give you a hug.
That's friend zone right there.
He's friend zoning her. And I think Ozza
No penis.
from Xavier, maybe.
She's not getting. That's what she's getting from X. Nope.
Yeah.
X is like, I'm winning this game. Like, he's like, all I got to do is win 2 competitions. I'm getting the votes. You know,
Operation No Man's.
I'm not taking my eye off the prize, Ozza. Yeah, so that's we're gonna be back Wednesday, or some of us will be back Wednesday. Actually, just me. Because this week, for some reason, Survivor is starting ahead of the Big Brother finishing, which is a bit unusual. And we cover Survivor here also on Super Mader Brothers podcasting. At least we did, starting with Winners at War, which was last season. So Jaemeel and Jeff are going to be covering the 2-hour premiere of Survivor on Wednesday. I guess that's going to end at 10. And so you guys are going to be on from 10 to 11. And then I will be watching Big Brother, the veto episode that will air after that at 10 o'clock. And I'll be here with Daryl Clark to talk about that episode right after you guys. We'll be following at 11 in a back-to-back schedule. Just for this, I guess, at least for 1 week, maybe for 2. We have to kind of look at the schedule for next week as well. But we got a couple.
How dare they? The finale is supposed to happen on the same day as the premiere.
Yeah, this feels like a week early, and I don't know why it's been moved up. And why, it seems like, I mean, CBS given up on this Big Brother season because they bumped their Sunday episode, and now this.
Well, CBS used to end Big Brother at the end of summer. It's supposed to be the summer show. It's September 19th. That's in 2 days.
Right, because we started late. This started in July instead of June, which was when it would normally start. So it's like we started a couple weeks late, and we're here. And I guess they're like, no, we're into school season now. We need Survivor on Wednesday nights to fill that spot, that primetime spot. So, guys, are you excited for that?
I'm interested in the Blue's Clues version of Survivor we might get, and what is going on with Jeff Probst's hair. So those 2 things I'm interested in.
Those are some good questions. Okay, so on that note, we're going to actually have a special podcast Tuesday night at 8 o'clock before our Star Trek podcast, our D Space Nine podcast. We're going to draft the 18 house guests. Guys, the first Canadian resident, at least, is playing from Toronto. Erica.
Toronto.
Thank you. Toronto. Erica, that's exciting that are the first Canadian resident to actually play. Like, not counting Sue Hawk. Jaemeel doesn't care.
She wasn't.
I think it's exciting. Resident. We never had Canadians.
Sue Hawk was a Canadian resident.
No, Canadian,
dual
citizen, right?
No, there was a guy a couple seasons ago.
Yeah, there was another guy too.
But he lived in the States. This is a Canadian. This is like, they're like us, Jeff. Like, live here in this country.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
We're not allowed to play. or until recently.
Yeah, she'll be the first one since Jeff Probst opened the border.
Yes, since because most game shows don't work like that. Like we can't try out for Big Brother US without becoming US citizens or US residents, and vice
You can
versa.
go on Price is Right.
You can go Price is Right, and there are some things, but then you got to pay the taxes. It's complicated. Anyway, so we're gonna be here with Daryl Clark on Tuesday at 8 to do the draft for Survivor. As mentioned, me and Daryl will be covering the Wednesday veto episode, and then Thursday, the three of us will be back together to talk about the live eviction, which will be more like I think at the normal time at 9:30 on Thursday, to break all that down. I know that's kind of out of order because we also have Star Trek podcasts sprinkled in there. So over on our other channel, Live Long in Podcast,
You're missing more episodes. Friday, there's an episode.
I didn't know
on the
there was a Friday
24th.
episode.
Then there's a Sunday episode on the 26th, and then there's the finales on the Wednesday.
Is the Friday episode just a recap show?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's gonna be a recap. So.
You can skip that. Okay.
And then put part 1.
Yeah. Is it the first part 1?
It could be part one plus the recap show. It could be both.
All right. Well, then we might be here Friday too. All right. Great. That's just what I wanted. A Friday podcast on top of everything else. Okay. So Monday night, 9:00 p.m. Check it out on Live Long and Podcast, our Star Trek themed channel, where we're going to be talking about the Gamesters of Triskelion. On Tuesday night, over on Live Long and Podcast, we're going to be talking about the Star Trek Deep Space Nine episode, The Sword of Kahless, from this 4th season. On Thursday, on Live Long and Podcast, we'll be talking about Star Trek Lower Decks, Season 2, Episode 7, name not yet released. We'll be talking about that with Davin Skellhorn from Locutors of Trek. That will be 7 p.m. on Thursday. And also, this is the week or the week of the month where we're going to be having our trivial debates over on our other channel, Trivial Debates. Let's show that lineup, which will be next Sunday morning. We got Max Duda versus Davin Skellhorn versus Jessica Chan, along with Chris Seymour hosting.
TBC.
Well, she's like, when I made the poster, she's like, I don't know if I can get a babysitter, and I got to move things around, and so I was like, okay, let me know. So I just put the TVC. So I think she is confirmed now, so I can remove the TVC. But yes, that's going to be the lineup. Questions to be released tomorrow. But check that out over in Trivial Debates on the next Sunday morning.
Chris Seymour's host.
Yeah, he hasn't hosted in a while, so it's I saw him yesterday, and he was like, I have all kinds of great ideas for questions about Primus. So get ready. Did I miss anything? Did I forget anybody? No. All good. Okay. Thanks for watching, liking, subscribing, and checking us out. Make sure to tell all your friends, and we'll sign off for tonight. And we'll be back. If you're a Big Brother fan, Wednesday we'll be back. If you're a Survivor fan, we'll be here Tuesday, and then if you're a Star Trek fan, we're over there on Monday. So get all ready. All right, because it's hard to keep track of it all. All right, let's sign off for tonight. We need any requests, guys?
No penis.
No penis. Yeah, I think that's a good. I think that's a thing. Where is it? I made a rule in the house. You never find it when you want it.
So made a rule in the house